thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Okay. So there's 5 of us here. I don't know if anybody's going to pop on, but I have a sneaking suspicion that everybody's feeling very overwhelmed. And so I have made the personal choice to make this class as simple as possible for tonight. And I've even given us a really simple assignment. So normally I try and pick 3 or 4 things that relate to the lecture. This week, your assignment is a review. So I've asked you 20 questions as a review. And after the review, like all things that we've covered so far. And then the rest of tonight, we're just going to be talking through how you would assess writing rather than going into some big theories about writing strategies and how you would teach writing and everything. I figure everybody can deserve a break, or everybody deserves a break because everybody's been working hard. So if you feel like you don't have enough work, you can always go back and read all of those articles for extension. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, then this is your chance to catch up. So when we go through this PowerPoint, are we all on? Can we all see where it says? Let's cancel that. Everyone sees where it says theories about writing, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to start off by acknowledging that we're on Treaty 6 territory and that we respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. So that's first and foremost. And then, like I said, for today, it's going to be short and sweet, so we just get the chance to go through and catch up and get some breathing room. So I'm going to start off by telling you our first major assignment. In this class, like I said, your grade is determined by 4 things. The first thing is just all of the assignments that you hand in, and I'm marking all of the assignments that you hand in for handing them in. I'm not judging whether or not you're right or wrong. So 25% of your grade comes from that. 25% of your grade comes from our next assignment that I'm going to show you. Oh, there, I've got a typo with writing. Oops. 25% comes from the next assignment on judging a student's writing. 25% is going to come from doing a lesson plan for me. And I've got some documents, but that's coming up in a month's time. And then our final thing that you're going to hand in to me is an exam that you go and you do on your own. So the questions that we're doing tonight are going to kind of help you keep these ideas in mind as you prepare for our final exam. And then on top of that, the things that we're going to talk about today will help you do the next writing piece. So it's a good thing that you're here, and I welcome those of you who are watching later. So like I said, your major assignment is worth 25%, and you're going to be given writing samples of 2 students' work. So just so you know, these 2 boys are actual real people that I know, that I have met in the flesh, and they produced this work for me last year. And you're going to be looking at these boys as if they are just coming to Canada. And this is all you have, and you have to try and prepare where these students are and how you would kind of analyze their work and where you might situate them into a class, and think about where you need to go with them. How do you get them to improve? Because that's one of the things, when you have somebody put in front of you, you have to think, what is it I need to actually start teaching them? So the teacher who had these students, to give you a bit of a heads up, these 2 boys are both students who are in China. And last summer, not summer as in just past a couple of months ago, because of course there was COVID, but the summer previously, I was in China doing teacher training at an English language school. I was invited to be a guest lecturer. And so I made a connection with these teachers, and I actually taught these boys a couple of classes. So I kind of I was there to try and help the teachers come up with plans for students. And so I actually know them, and I know a little bit how they were taught. And they're both the same age as my daughter. So they'd be in grade 9 this year. When they wrote this assignment that you'll be looking at, they would have been in grade 7 going into grade 8. And both of them had parents who had planned to bring their boys overseas. They had lived their whole lives in China, and both had dads who were looking at international contracts so that they could either go live in the United States or Canada or Europe or whatever. So it is really plausible that these boys could have been plucked kind of at this moment in time and dropped into a class. So the teacher who was teaching this class, they got language instruction, and through this language instruction, they got reading practice, they got writing practice, speaking and listening practice. And so all of the practice that they did in the class focused around a book from a series called Raz Kids. So I'm just curious, for the people who are here, who has seen and heard of Raz Kids? Have you guys never heard of it?
I have.
Okay. Safia, you have?
Yeah.
Okay. So Raz Kids, you can go and you can Google it tonight if you want. And it will sometimes come up as reading A to Z, A-Z. And it's just a program that's in almost every elementary school and quite a few junior high schools. And the kids would sign up, the teacher would register the class, and then the kids would go through, they would get a reading level that's designed by something called Fontes and Pinnell. That's something else you might want to look up. So here's another question. When you were in school, did you get a reading level that was A, B, C, D all the way up to Z? Do any of you remember being a letter G or a letter Q?
No.
Okay. Well, often now teachers will do what they call benchmark kids, which is different than the benchmarks that we're talking about. And when you benchmark a kid, they will get a reading level based on how well they understand the story and what their fluency level is. And the more they practice that at that particular level, they get better and they move up through the alphabet. And so there's a certain letter that you're supposed to be if you're in grade 2, or if you're in grade 6, or if you're in grade 4, right? So if you're in grade 1, but you should start in grade 1 kind of at a letter A, and by the end of grade 1 you might be a letter A, B, C, D, F, G. You might be a G or an H, and then you'd be a letter J by the time you finish grade 2, and then in grade 6 you would be a Z. So that gives you kind of an indication somewhere along those lines of where you should probably be as a reader. And so you can look up this book and you can look up their reading level and try and assess what it is that the teacher was doing with the kids at this time. And that's going to give you some hints about how you would be benchmarking them as a score. And so you start thinking about, when you start reading the writing sample, you read the book that the kids have read because it's all included. You try and think, what is it the teacher was probably doing with them to help them to get the stage to read this book. Okay. So again, when we do this, you're going to go through all of the reading benchmarks, all of the writing benchmarks, and you're going to be looking in the benchmarks themselves to see where they would fit, what score you would give the boys. And so once you've done that, you're going to think, what would be the first thing that you would teach these boys to do? How are you going to help them become better in English? So that's your major assignment that's coming up in a couple of weeks that you'll be handing in to me. But for that, here's what you need to know in order to be successful to do that. So the first thing, when a student does writing for you, and I know this is really quite small, but you will find all of these are the benchmarks that come from the Learn Alberta website. So please tell me, my friends, my 5 friends who are here, do you remember how to find the benchmarks? The answer is yes. Do you remember how to find the benchmarks?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, if you're lying, that's okay, but you find them, you type in learnalberta.ca ESL benchmarks, and the benchmarks will pop up. And what I have here for you is I cut out the benchmarks that pertain to all of the writing. So I went to grade 7 to 9 and pulled out those benchmarks. So when you look at the writing, the first thing you're doing looking at this writing is you're looking at the student and you're saying, what kind of vocabulary are they using? So some of these things that we're talking about tonight have specific lessons that go with them, and vocabulary, like I told you, is a very specific lesson. But if I wait until the very end, you're going to have all of the assignments due in December, and that's cruel. So we're going to start by doing this, but I'll give you a bit of a heads up. So when you're looking at a piece of students' writing, and you're looking for vocabulary, you're trying to determine their vocabulary level. One of the things you need to do is to figure out kind of where their vocabulary is. And on the bottom here, I typed out the 5,000 most common English words. So this is a website that you can find anywhere. If you don't like this particular list, just type in 5,000 most common English words and you will find multitudes of them, because many textbook companies, especially second language companies, will produce entire textbooks devoted to developing these 5,000 words. So have a look through that list, and then you're trying to decide, is the student picking words that are really in this list, or do they have their own vocabulary that's extended well beyond this 5,000 words? And then, so that would be one. And then you're also looking to see if the student is discussing subject-specific words. So do they know the words that are beyond this 5,000, but are those specific words that you have taught that person? So I'll give you an example. As you guys know, I'm teaching French Immersion grade 2-3 right now. I'm assuming you guys remember that I'm telling you this, right? In case I haven't, I'm teaching grade 2-3 French Immersion. And so in my class, my group of kids, they all missed half of last year due to COVID, kind of the same way that you did. So they're essentially half a year behind in vocabulary. And I'm a pretty good language teacher, as I hope I'm a pretty good language teacher anyways, considering that's what I've been paid to do for the past 20 years. But in this class, my students said to me, they actually said, Madame, sometimes we understand everything that you say in French, and sometimes we don't understand you at all. And that's because the students in my class, they don't have that 5,000 word threshold of vocabulary yet. So they're still working on those basic words. Once they get those 5,000 basic words, they probably have enough BICs that they will be able to follow everything that happens in the classroom. And one of the things that I'm working on with them is I am teaching them those 5,000 words, but I'm also teaching them subject-specific words. So for instance, in math right now, we're doing patterning and teaching them how to do a pattern. One of the things that I have to teach them is, okay, there's a specific math language that goes along with patterning. So I'm teaching kids, for example, not just a pattern is red, blue, red, blue. I'm saying, so we have different kinds of patterns. We have increasing and decreasing patterns. as well as we have repeating patterns. So increasing and decreasing patterns are something that is a vocabulary item that's very specific to elementary school understanding that concept. And so they won't be able to fully appreciate that concept if they don't have that vocabulary. But the only reason they have that vocabulary is because I'm repeating it ad nauseum so that they learn it. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Nobody's confused? Okay, so when it comes to this, after you get past these 5,000 words that are on this list, then you start moving up and you start getting better. By the time you're level 5, you're a near native English speaker. So you are going to use the same kind of vocabulary as I am. So you have to look at these students' assessments and figure, where do they fit in amongst all of this? Are they absolute beginners and they're still working on those 5,000 words? Or are they near native speakers? And remember, you're not doing your students a favor by putting them in a higher bracket. So if they are really working at a developing level, don't say that they're working at a bridging level, right? You're not helping somebody by bumping them up. In fact, you're making it more difficult for them to get the appropriate level of ESL support. Okay? Are we clear for vocabulary?
Yes.
Okay. So vocabulary is actually probably the most easiest cut and dry for the 7 categories, I think. The next one is grammar. So when you're looking at this, when you're looking at the students' writing, after you've decided kind of where they fit in for grammar, you're trying to decide where they fit in for or where they fit in for vocabulary, or figuring where they fit in for grammar. And so you're looking for specific things. So in a beginner student might write simple sentences that might just be nouns and verbs. You know, the boy go, the dog run, the cat jump. And they might not have the conjugation in with that unless they're copying, right? If they're copying sentences, they would automatically be checking for, you know, does the verb conjugate properly? And as somebody who's at a beginning level, they're working in present and simple present sentences. They're not saying the boy went. And they're not saying they're not even saying the boy goed, right? They're looking at very specific things. And they might have some pronouns, but that's much more difficult, and that works into developing, right? So the boy goes to the park. He sees his friend. So that's a specific level of complexity that moves up as the student's doing it. So as they develop, they're moving from nouns, replacing nouns with pronouns. And then they're starting to get into object pronouns like his book and things like that. So that's how they move from beginning into developing. When they get into expanding is when they start making the difference between the boy and the boys and, you know, their books. And they're looking at kind of more complex sentence structures. And they're using many more tenses, many more verb tenses, and they're using those tenses interchangeably. By the time, like I said, by the time they get to bridging, they're looking at a lot of different verb tenses. They have much more complex sentence structures. And by the time they get into expanding, again, they're near native. They can make sentences like, I wonder what would happen, and have you considered the possibility that, right? So we're moving from the boy go to, have you considered the possibility that the boy has decided to go? And somewhere along the middle are all of the kinds of ranges of sentence structures in between. So you have to go through and you have to kind of decide where that is going to be. Are we good so far?
I just have a question.
Yep.
Is there like a specific exam or like a test you can give to the children to help you better determine which level they're at?
There's not necessarily an exam, but lucky for you, because I was just about to mention this, when you go to the learnalberta.ca ESL benchmarks site,
Mhm.
there are exemplars. So somebody has gone along and done this test with like hundreds of grade 9 kids or grade 7 to 9 kids, and they've said a beginner's writing will look like this. And a developing writer will look like this. An expanding writer will look like this. So it's very easy for you to go and take the writing samples that I've given you and to compare them to the ones that are there. Obviously, the topic is different and the prompts are different, but you do have something to go compare. So you're not just picking out of your own head what is the right level for that student.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Because a lot of these things I'm like, well, I mean, how much knowledge do they need on that subject? Do they need to be like, I don't know, because it's just, there's not a lot of descriptive, and I can see that some of it's highlighted in blue, which so I'm assuming means that you can click on it and they'd have more information. But I don't, there's not a lot of information to assess a student, I don't think.
Right. So Jessica, I'm going to try and do a new share, hold on, of a Chrome tab, and then I'm going to go to the ESL benchmarks. I don't know if this works. Do you guys see the ESL benchmark site?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you go under writing samples,
Mm-hmm.
right here are all of the grades and all of the levels.
Okay.
The ones for grade 1 and grade 2, those ones are a little bit sketchy in terms of, yeah, some of the things they're asking for level 1, grade 1, there's no grade 1. There's grade 1s who finish the year who aren't writing like that. So sometimes those ones are higher. But if you go to grade 7, okay, and you go to level 2, this student here has done this writing sample. And I'm not going to pull up to look at the actual sample, but you see here, the global warming has become a serious threat to our planet. Explain what we can do as citizens to reduce the effects of global warming. You may need to consider factors such as recycling, the impact of fossil fuels, the impact of consumerism, right? So if you look at that list of 5,000 words, that list of 5,000 words probably doesn't have fossil fuels or coal. And hopefully 10 years from now, it'll have coal even less, because hopefully coal will die. But anyhow, so this is what a person with a writing level of 2 would be able to write. As citizens, we can do many things to reduce the effects of global warming. So you see here what this student has done. He's taken the question and rewrote the question,
Mm-hmm.
right? The recycling. So now it shows you that he's learned how to take the instructions and turn that into a sentence. The recycling, don't throw the water bottle, don't throw the paper, don't throw the plastic. Recycle the garbage and make use of again and again. So he's got the idea, he's got some things that he has to say, but he's not really structuring it in a way that you can use it. And he's using the simplest sentences he can to make as many sentences as he can. Do you see that?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And even at the bottom here, the impact of consumerism, consumerism buy things and just throw anywhere or somewhere else,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he's got kind of this idea. He knows what the structure is, but he doesn't know how to write the sentences and to put things in his own words. And if we go to an even more complex one, so that would be level 2. Let's go to a level 4. So right in terms of length, automatically you can see these are 2 different people, right? Global warming is making our world a dangerous place and is destroying the world. Global warming is caused by the greenhouse gases. Due to a global warming, the ozone layer is depleting and the harmful ultraviolet rays are reaching reaching the earth. So right there, he's got lots of specific vocabulary that's not going to be in that list of 5,000. Like
Mhm.
ultraviolet rays wouldn't be. So he's clearly heard about this topic and he has a lot of things to say. And so he's also able to express kind of those ideas. To stop the causes of global warming, we could start by recycling. This is a process in which we reuse things like cardboard, plastic bottles, and plastic bags. You see here, he's got the plastic bottles and plastic bags. He's putting those things in plural. And cardboard, he knows that cardboard would not be plural. We reuse things like cardboards, right? Plastic bottle. So he knows which things you should put an S on and which ones you shouldn't, which nouns are countable and which ones aren't.
Mhm.
And so even if he still makes some mistakes, he's definitely got a better command of grammar.
Yeah, makes sense. You can definitely see a huge difference.
A huge
Quite a bit.
difference.
Yeah.
So it's not to this student's to the other student's advantage to say he's level 4, right? Because it impacts funding and all kinds of things. And besides, you look like you don't know how to judge things effectively if you bump him up. But so you anyhow, you can see that. And then where am I? So now I have to go. Are there any questions so far, you guys?
No.
No one? It's all clear? Okay.
Yes, all good. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go back and share my other tab. Okay. So grammar is one of those ones that we have to look at. But then on top of grammar, we have syntax. So syntax is more about where we put the words within the sentences, right? Is the student able to put all of the words in the right order? So for instance, a Japanese learner might say the boy the cat has, right? Because that would be the word order of Japanese, right? So is the student trying to figure out where the words are? Do they put them in mostly the right order? And then again, by the time you get to extending, you're at near native levels, you're going to be doing that kind of in ways similar to what I'm able to do. Okay. Strategic knowledge is not so much looking at kind of the words, the grammar. It's trying to get your whole message across. How do you go about writing a text? And where do you tack if you're not sure what to do? What do I do if I don't know how to spell ultraviolet rays? Can I try and sound it out? That's kind of the beginning step you would look at. If you're an ESL learner, you're trying to sound it out. You have no idea about spelling, but you're spelling things out the way that you're pronouncing them. And if your pronunciation isn't clear yet, which it wouldn't be if you're a beginner, you're going to see that kind of influenced in your writing. And then you're also looking at things like capitalizing the beginning of sentences. Do you know how to kind of outline a text to make sure your text looks like a text, even if you don't know what all of the sentences are that are in there? When you get to level 2, you're actually using strategies to go about and try and think, do you know how to go back to the text and find the word that you need to find? And if you don't know how to spell it, do you know where you can go look something up to see if you can figure out how to spell it properly? Can you use a sentence starter to get kind of your to get your sentence across? So you're moving from kind of looking at words to trying, I know I should know this, but I don't know this. Can I go back and can I check? And then when you move to expanding, you're looking at things, okay, do I know how to turn this sentence around? I don't know how to spell beautiful because it's got a whole bunch of vowels and I know I don't know how to do that. Can I change it and spell pretty instead? Right? Can I have a list of words and I go pick from that list of words one that's already there so I can spell it properly? And then you get into things like homonyms. Do I know how to choose the correct there, or there? Do I know how to choose the correct whether, right? And then when I get into punctuation, I'm not just looking at full stops and capital letters. I'm looking into exclamation marks and, apostrophes and things like that. And after I move from there, when I'm moving into bridging, I'm looking at circumlocution. So I don't know the word for ultraviolet light. Do I know how to say, and the sun has special rays that when they hit your skin, they're terrible and they could cause cancer. Like, do I know how to say something in another way? Because I don't know how to spell, or I don't know the vocabulary for the thing that I'm looking at. And then when I'm looking at expanding, I'm looking all the way to how do I set up a text so I can just write things out. As somebody who writes things for a living, like journal articles, I can't write without a plan. So do I have a plan of attack for how I'm going to organize my essay and what things I have to say there? And do I know how to go about and write that whole journal article? So you're looking kind of step by step for that. And again, all of these things, there's exemplars if you go to the learnalberta.ca ESL benchmark website. Good?
Yes.
Okay.
Your slides aren't showing. I don't know if you meant to do that before.
No?
Yeah, I don't see them. I don't know if it's just me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so
Me
sorry.
neither.
No, that's okay.
Is that better?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's good now.
So sorry. So where did we stop? Okay. So
It was
did
just
you get
for
the grammar
grammar,
slide?
yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
again, with the syntax, again, like I said, it's where the word order is in the sentences. And then with strategic knowledge, you're looking from the spelling patterns all the way to I've made an outline of my whole entire text so that I can write with ease, right? And then everything in between. And when you go to judge the student's writing, you can go look at the exemplars and use those kind of as a guide for checking each of these categories. Okay?
I have a question, Trudy.
Yes.
So like while you started on this, I have been on my phone. I'm using the iPad, but on my phone, I'm looking at learnalberta.ca. Like I'm following it. And I noticed that you were using grades 7 to 9.
Yes.
So there's the 4 tiers on there, right? And so
Yes.
and so you're using tier 3. The different sections under writing that you're talking about here today,
Mhm.
you just ended with strategies.
Yes.
Are those going to be? Are we going to need, like, you're just using 7 and 9 as an example, or are the principles that you're teaching today when you're talking about like strategies would be like, how to make simpler, use how to say the same thing but using simpler words, like I don't know how to ultraviolet radiation or whatever it was, so you say like rays from the sun or something like that.
Right.
Are all the examples that you're giving, not the specific examples, but like the idea of compensating with more simpler words, does that follow throughout all of the tiers?
Yes. So what's a level 4 in grade 7 is not a level 4 in grade 3. Okay. There you will find very few. So if I'm looking at grade 7 level 4, what's here, you will find a native English speaker in grade 3 will probably not be able to write that paragraph under any circumstances, because the kids develop and grow, right? And so your ESL students are chasing the native speakers. So we need them to be able to do something close to what a native speaker in that grade would do.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So a grade for instance, your daughter, she's in grade 2.
That's right.
So if she's in grade 2, she's a native speaker of English. For the most part, she's also a heritage language speaker, but she's a native speaker for the most part, I would guess.
Yeah.
And so her English, some ESL student who comes in has to develop the same.
Anyone else lost her?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I can't hear her.
Yep.
Maybe it'll take a few minutes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just to say it again, Trudy, if you can hear us, we can't hear you or see you.
Oh, I think she got kicked off of my stream.
Oh, is she not on there even?
Oh,
Oh, she's back now. You're
Yeah.
muted, Trudy.
yeah.
Oh, how
There we go.
horrible. How horrible. I'm sitting there and I'm like, Tim, are you confused? I don't hear you. Oh no, it's on the internet. And that's gone out. So
No, it's okay. You started, you really, if you just want to, you just said, oh, your daughter's a native English speaker. She's a heritage speaker, and then we lost you.
okay. So an ESL student who comes in grade 2 is trying to catch up to your daughter. So an ESL student needs to be able to do what your daughter can do. But your daughter cannot write like a kid in grade 7. So your ability, but if an ESL speaker came in and that ESL speaker could write like your daughter, that would be amazing. That would put her as level 5. But as your daughter goes through school, she can do so many things in grade 2 that by the time she gets to grade 7, she's had 5 years of school. She'll be able to write like 3-page or, full-page essays or a full-page story. So the ESL student has to try and catch her at the level of grade 7 when she's in grade 7. Does that make sense?
That's why you said it's always a chasing or it's always a moving target.
Right.
Right. Okay. So we're assessing them based on, that's why there's not just on those 4 tiers, but when you were clicking on that thing before, there's every grade.
Right.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That is very valuable information. Thanks, Trudy.
So, yeah, that whole concept of chasing target, you're not at a certain level, you're at a certain level in comparison to other people.
Right.
Not
Which
that you
is
should
why
compare
you're
your-
not doing anyone a favor by marking them higher.
Right.
Right. Got it. Sorry if everyone else knew that already, but I just wanted to get that straight in my head.
No, if you have that question, odds are somebody else has that question. It might not be the 5 people who are here. It could be somebody who's watching at home. So it's perfectly okay to ask. And besides, I think it's a good question. Okay, so I'm guessing right now that you see me and you don't see a shared screen.
That's right.
Okay, so, and I think I might have to sneeze, but I don't have corona. Okay, I'm paranoid now because at school, all of the teachers are like, oh no, if I get sick, I've got to come up with 20 days of subplans and I have no time for that. So, so there's a little piece of what's going on in the work world for you. So, and by the way, in case you guys don't know this, the reason why teachers come to school sick is because to write out what you're going to do for 5 hours during the day, it is way easier to work when you're sick. Of course, that does not work when you're trying to combat an international virus. So don't go to work when you're sick, especially if you might have COVID. However, it's a real pain in the ass to try and come up with like a whole pile of subplans. Okay, sociolinguistic factors. Can you guys see this slide?
Yep.
Okay, so sociolinguistic factors are things like an awareness of how you would structure a text, right? Do you know what you should put into a text? How you would structure it? Now, so a beginner writer is just going to write down whatever they know. If you gave me, so my Japanese writing is very poor. My speaking when I was living in Japan was not bad, but my writing was always poor. So if I was trying to write and you said, Trudy, sit down and write me an essay, I wouldn't have any clue on how to do that, but I could try and write a couple of sentences, right? And so it's certainly just random things that I would be writing. It wouldn't be in a function of a text. But if I get, as I move up, I'm starting to look, I'm moving from just kind of trying to write out words to trying to, okay, I have to write an essay. So the essay that I'm writing is about, let's say it's about the weather. So I would try and put one paragraph about the wind, right? I could say something like, Japan has lots of wind. Big wind is called a tsunami, or a big wind is a typhoon. Typhoons happen in Tokyo. I don't like typhoons. Typhoons have rain. And so so I might be able to go from there. And then as I'm expanding, I'm getting much more into the sense of, okay, what's the difference between a friendly letter and an information text, right? And then as I'm getting even into level 4 and I'm thinking about narrative writing, I'm thinking about how to write a story. What is the meaning behind my story? What's the plot of my story? How do I kind of make things much more interesting? And then again, by the time I get to level 5, I'm working on writing that matches that of my English speaking peers. Are we good? Okay. Okay. I'm just nervous because now that I've cut out, I'm afraid I'm going to cut out again. Okay. Discourse knowledge, again, we're looking kind of at these same kind of things. Conjunctions. A beginner student is going to use and but all the time. I'm going to the store and I'm buying milk. I'm going to the store and I'm buying ice cream. I'm buying ice cream and milk because I'm buying ice cream and milk. I want a milkshake. By the time I get to discourse knowledge for level 2, I'm buying milk and ice cream because I want a milkshake. And so the conjunctions that I'm using, the way I'm connecting my sentences is getting much more complex. By the time I'm getting to, the next level, I'm start by expanding. In order to make a milkshake, first you have to have the ingredients. Then you have to have a blender. After that, you put the ingredients in the blender and hit start, right? So you're moving from and to because to time markers. And then by the time you get into bridging, you're using words like however, in my opinion, those kinds of transitions from sentences to keep your paragraphs running smoothly. And then again, by expanding your near native. Okay. Editing is a really important skill, and it's something that develops over time. And so again, you're starting with, Kate, go back and look at your work, make sure that's a capital. Go back and look at your work and make sure you spelled your words properly. Go back and check. Do you say goad? Do we say goad? I don't think we say goad. Do we say goad? What do we say instead of goad? And then after they're good at that, you're working towards other things like, your verb tenses. You have a list of things that you might check, right? First, you make sure every word has every name has a capital letter. Every sentence has a capital letter. Every sentence has a full stop. By the time you get to expanding, you're looking for other grammatic or other punctuation, right? You put a question mark here, but is that really a question? I'm going to the store. Should that have a question mark? Maybe it should, based on the way you're pronouncing it, right? And then you're looking for spelling. And by the time you get into bridging and extending, you're looking at, I went to the store and got a pop. Would it be better not to say something along the lines of, because I was craving sugar, I made the choice to venture out of my house to get a pop, or something like that. So you're starting to look at things stylistically, not just looking for surface features as you're editing. So those kind of up to there, that's the editing. Those are the sections that you're going to be looking at when you're doing your evaluation of your student. Are there any questions so far?
No.
And like I said, you have all of the opportunity to go and look at that and look at all of the exemplars to use as a guidepost. And our very last slide. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I did have a question. What if you find that your student is below level 1? So if they're in grade 7, but they're below level 1 beginning, say they just came into Canada and they've been put into grade 7, but they have no English skills, 0 or very little. What would you still put them as a 1 or?
They would be working towards level 1.
Okay. So there is a kind of like a slot saying that they're working towards level 1. You don't have to just put level 1.
Well, I'm trying to think. That's an excellent question, Jessica. And I'm trying to think if there is completing or not completing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can mark somebody as 0. So I think that they would probably be 1. And I can't remember the last time I looked at it, if there is a working towards a level 1 or a completed level 1. Oh, that's an amazing question. I'm going to have to get back to you with that, because I do this every year, but I haven't looked at it recently. And now since I'm in immersion, I didn't do it at the start in September. So I'm going to get back to you on that.
Okay. Oh, that's actually another question. You said with immersion, can ELL students be put in French immersion?
Absolutely. And in fact, ELL student, and it's happening more and more and more all of the time, because it's happening because we're getting a lot of immigrants from Africa. And so those kids, they might be native speakers of French. And so their parents have chosen to put them in French immersion. Or it could just be, so those kids are, a lot of those are coming in. But on top of African kids coming in, a lot of European parents will put their kids in, because there's plenty of evidence that being in immersion doesn't hurt them. And it inspires kids who are in immersion are far more likely to maintain good relationships with their heritage language. So if you're a Polish kid and your parents decide to put you in immersion, you are more likely to speak Polish if you go to immersion than if you go to an English-only school. Which is maybe something you didn't expect, but there's evidence that learning French opens up the opportunity to say, languages are important and I can communicate in lots of them, and I'm still like other people, even though I speak different languages. So it has some esteem building. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
So French is an official language in Canada, including this province. We have special, within, what we're looking at here, in terms of, we have to do this for ESL. when someone is identified as an ELL, right?
Mhm.
Do they have FLL?
French is, so they do in Quebec,
Sure.
but we wouldn't consider them that in Alberta, right?
So right, exactly. So I was just sort of wondering, like, if a person does come and an immigrant family, let's say, does come to Canada and they've got kids in middle school, like say like grade 6 or 7 or 8 or something like that. Middle school isn't a proper term, but yeah, like in say like, tier 3.
Mhm.
And you put them straight into French immersion because that was one of the languages that was spoken in their country.
And they speak French already.
But not nearly to the level, not fluently, for appropriate for their age. So it is like they're French language learners. There's no program to fund them or anything like that. There would be no one with an expertise unless they were probably got their education in Quebec or something, where they would be doing the same thing that we're doing for students to improve their English and make sure that they're getting where they need to be.
This is a hugely political conversation that I would love to have with you after the camera's not on.
Sure.
And anybody else is willing to stick around for that too, because I'm very opinionated on that, but I'll wait until the camera's off. Our very last slide is all about synthesis. So we've covered a lot of information up to this point in this class. And maybe you don't feel like it's a lot, but I just want to highlight the things that we've covered so far, because we've only been together a month. And so we've already covered the teacher quality standard, plurilingualism versus bilingualism, BICS and KELP and the work of Jim Cummins, typical childhood bilingualism, creating a welcoming classroom, including information about Stephen Krashen and his 6 hypotheses and Maslow and his hierarchy, the ESL benchmarks that we did tonight, and the simple view of reading and all of the subcomponents that are part of the simple view of reading. So, like I told you already, the information that we're going over today or the questions, there's 20 questions for your assignment this week that are all about all of these things that we have talked about up to this point. So if you have any questions, let me know. Hopefully things are starting to solidify for you and you're seeing the interconnection from these things. And are there any questions about that? No?
Well, with the exam, do we only get like a certain amount of trials for it, or do we get? Because I remember in the video, welcome video, it said you get unlimited amount of attempts for the quiz.
Oh, but that's for quizzes. So this is all stuff that's going to help you towards your final exam.
Mm.
And I can't give you 100 tries on that. You get 3 days to write it on your own. So but if you have something along here, I just think review is incredibly important, and it's always good to go back and review, and it's good to have somebody to force you to review, because otherwise you're too busy moving on to the next thing and you forget about the last thing. So the hallmark of a good teacher is somebody who makes room for review. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And if not, I'm going to turn off the record button. And
I have a question regarding the assignment.